Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I'm Marcus Spar, and today I have a special guest for our hero study for this month, and that is my friend Dan Fredrickson. That I've gotten to know him through the D&D group that we're a part of called Fellowship of the Dice, and it's just been so great to be able to get to know him. And yeah, I wanted to bring him on to share some of his stories. So Dan, thanks so much for being here.
Hello. I'm just adjusting my chair is pointed because my camera's in a weird spot. So
That's
I noticed I
okay.
kept looking to the side. Still kind
Yeah.
of doing it. Work on that.
It's a work in progress.
It is.
So for for this interview, I just have some questions that I will be asking you, but feel free to take the answers wherever it leads. Because again, I do everything I can to create a safe space for us to just talk about whatever is on our hearts and our minds.
Okay.
So, Dan, to start us off here, actually, before I get into the questions, I'm just curious if there's anything that the listeners need to know about you.
Well, I don't know. I haven't been in a job interview for a long time. I'm not sure how if they asked to tell me about yourself, what I'd even say. I like cats and long walks on the beach. Yeah. Um, no, I'm just Dan, kind of a quirky guy. I like a lot of things. I work too much probably. Um, been doing more or less the same job for a long time, working in the movie industry on the exhibition side, not the production side. So I not responsible for what Hollywood's doing these days. Um, live with and am engaged to John, who's potentially one of the other people that's going to be interviewed or has already been
Yes,
interviewed.
yes, he will be a guest in the future. So, Dan, I would like for you just to give us some brief snapshots of important moments in your life.
Well, I, there's a few things that I thought of here, and I don't know why my mind went to that, but I know you and I have talked a bit about my queerness or gayness. Uh, and of course, that does shape a lot of things in life, but isn't exclusively um, the most important things in my life. Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I started doing a few years back was buying a bottle of wine whenever I feel like I hit an important milestone in life. So thinking back, things that would be important. I was a nerdy kid growing up. I think most of us probably were. Um, at least that you're interviewing in this series, maybe listeners. Um, but I've always been kind of an awkward person. But thinking back, some of the formative moments, I think one of the things that really stands out is when I came out. That was back in 2004. I was 16, and there's probably stuff farther back when I was a kid, but honestly, I don't think that much about it back then. And now being in my late 30s, it's like another lifetime ago. Don't really remember that much. Spent a lot of time with my grandma growing up. On my mom's side, we were real close, so I was kind of a grandma's boy. But so I'm skipping around. So coming out for me was a big thing. I was little too interested in looking at the underwear pages of the JCPenney's catalog, the men's underwear pages. Did some research online. Um, that could be interpreted badly. There was a website called the Student Center back in the early days where um, high school and college students would talk about different student issues and social issues, and yeah, talked about there, felt empowered. I told one friend, and then I told a couple other friends. I was in ROTC and marching band in high school, so kind of all over the place. Um, but yeah, ended up telling my mother while eating a corn dog, which is, I remember that. Um, so if you ever want to know that if that tells you what kind of person I am, I'm a goof. And the fact that I told my mother that I might be bisexual while I was eating corn dogs for lunch is pretty gay. Uh, moving along, other important snapshots. I mean, there's little things, but no major relationships or anything, but buying my house was a big deal. Although I'm skipping ahead, probably moving to Idaho. I moved to Idaho from the Phoenix area, moved to Boise. Um, Going from a city of 4 million people down to a city of 700,000 was a pretty big deal. A lot of things were different, and I was living in the farthest reaches of farmland and with my family at first. That was when I was 20, though. I was really probably old enough to do other stuff on my own, but not ready. Um,
I don't know of really anyone who's ready to go off and do things on their own when they're 20.
and looking back, I mean, I didn't feel it that way at the time, and I, in a position of privilege in Idaho, there's probably more jobs open because it was a growing area. But that was the height of it was 2008 when I moved to Idaho, to late 2007. It's right at the height of the subprime mortgage crisis and economic issues. So yeah, um, I was not at that point financially to move out on my own. So my family had moved to Idaho, and I stuck around in Arizona until the house sold, and yeah, eventually followed. But other big moments, it was a big thing for me because about 2 years after that, I moved out on my own. It was a big deal.
Mhm.
After that, about a year later, a guy I was dating at the time encouraged me to go to back to school because I'd never really gone to college. I took a couple classes right out of high school, so that was a big deal. I was going to be an environmental studies major. I was so young and naive. Um, I got lucky and was at the right place at the right time and able to buy a house in 2012. So that was another a big moment. It's funny, for as much as I'm obsessed with, and you hear me talk about my work, Marcus, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I don't know that I feel like that's a milestone. I feel like it's always kind of just been more of it's a job. I might like what
Yeah.
I do, but yeah. Um, Other than that, it was kind of autopilot until I moved to Washington. I did get a promotion at work. Um, and so in 2018, skipping ahead 6 years, moved to Washington. And that again, once again, was a shock moving from a city of 750,000 people to 300,000 people. Um, and in a much, honestly, it's interesting considering I lived in Phoenix, where I live now, and the Tri-Cities and Pasco. It's the largest minority community I've ever lived in. Uh, Being that, Pasco, if you're not aware, the Tri-Cities has a very huge Hispanic population and
Mhm.
culture. And not a, well, you know this, but yeah, not a huge shock or anything, but it's interesting. It's different, I guess. And I like the experience of living here, but it's just funny how when I was living in Phoenix, I was living in a whiter community than I am now. Shouldn't bring race into it, but not trying to, but yeah. Um, I think meeting John was a pretty formative moment. That was in 2020 pandemic. Um, that was important because it made me stop trying so hard at work. Hopefully, my boss isn't watching this, but realize that I need to have more of a work-life balance, setting
Mm-hmm.
those boundaries. That's been important the last few years. But
I feel like that's something a lot of people have had to wrestle with and figure out, especially when there's just more and more these days. It's like there's an emphasis more on giving your all at work and then not really having enough for the people that you're the closest with. So,
mhm.
man, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations where it is just a lot of, man, I got to figure out this work-life balance thing. I got to figure out this work-life balance.
Well, and it's not easy, uh, especially if you're on a job where you're on call. And I know you kind of are too with your work to a large degree,
Hmm.
right? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There
I'm
there
sorry.
there are
I was like, I
times
think.
when I will have clients who will just send me a text or call out of the blue because they're in some kind of crisis and they're like, I really need to talk. And yeah,
Mhm.
there are times where I'm definitely on call. So one question I have based on what you shared is 2020 was not a good year for a lot of people, yet that also was the year that you met John. And so I'm curious, how was it for you guys trying to explore this relationship during a time when there's a lot of social distancing and even fear around the COVID virus?
Well, we actually met in 2019, in December. So it was,
You guys had a couple of months before it really hit.
yeah, yeah, I know. I'm pushing. For those of you listening at home, if you welcome to the first awkward conversation or the first awkward interview Marcus has done. Uh, no, it was. I think it wasn't as hard as you might expect, and maybe some of it's because John and I are older. Uh, and what I mean by that is there was social distancing, yes, but like when it all started getting crazy with the pandemic, John and I would still see each other because we wasn't anything else to do. So we get together and spend more time together at home and things, coming over to each other's houses. Although that was mostly my house at first because he was still living with his ex at the time. So yeah, that was an awkward thing for him. But in the first few months, it's about 2 months into the pandemic was when he sold his house. So he's had his own space, and yeah, I I don't remember a ton from early on, honestly. I should. I feel bad, but we just kind of clicked and got along well. I remember I made spaghetti for him at my house um, around the time the pandemic started, or Valentine's Day. I think it was Valentine's Day, but the pandemic wasn't really happening yet. There was the mysterious reports of an unusual virus in China on the news. But yeah, it also allowed us to spend more time together than we probably would have. So we spent a lot of time gaming. Um, for me, work was on and off until mid-April because you could still at first do we couldn't be open to the public, but we could have people come in and work together as long as we were taking their temperature and things. And so we were doing cleaning and all of us, of course, back in April 2020 thought that in 6 weeks everything would be fine because everybody would be good about it. And
We know
yeah,
how that turned out.
yeah, and in most of the lower 48, everybody opened back up in April, and then in Washington and Oregon, we were shut down for a year and a half.
It was also during the pandemic that you and I met first virtually
Mhm.
because our friend Ben put together this Dungeons and Dragons gaming group, and we were playing online until the vaccine became available. And it was it was interesting being in this group with I imagine it was probably a little harder for you than it was for me because I knew several of the people there, and it was you and Brandon that I didn't really know that well.
Yeah.
But here we are coming together to go after Strahd in the Curse of Strahd campaign, and then as soon as everyone got the vaccines and we felt comfortable, we started gaming in person, and it's just been wonderful to be able to spend this time with you and with everyone else as often as we do.
Yeah. It was fun. And it's funny, I think John and I actually kind of made date nights out of it. I think we'd get together and play, and he'd have his computer. I seem to remember that because I remember there was a lot of us both sitting next to each other on the couch, and I'd be like, turn off your microphone. Because, you'd get the echo and yeah, but I think I'm getting back off topic, but long story short, I think the gist of it is the pandemic and dating John during 2020 probably made us closer sooner than if there wasn't a pandemic, just because it allowed us to have more time.
So, Dan, what is something in your life that you've had to overcome?
I've been thinking about just um spoiler, I have the questions open here in front of my face on the computer, and as I've been thinking about them, um and the thing I was gonna say, I don't know. I think I've been lucky. There hasn't been a lot that I've had to overcome. And I don't mean to sound all high on a grand. I don't mean to put myself up and be like I'm perfect, but that's not what I. Let me backtrack on that. You don't necessarily have to cut this out, but I'm really good if you guys didn't know. Maybe that's what I've overcome is putting my foot in my mouth. Because I talk before I think. It's a real problem. As I've listed, what, two things now I've had to overcome? No, it's being a white cis gay man, I have not had to overcome that much. I could say, oh, being gay is something to overcome, but it's not. Um, it's not as big of a thing. My family has been accepting for the most part. I didn't tell my, never told my father, but my mother told him like 5 years ago, and him and I have yet to have that conversation. So, but it's met John, and they're fine. But it's just like one of those unsaid things. But so many other people coming from poverty, uh, people with more difficult backgrounds. I haven't had that much to overcome. I've kind of been in a position of luck. I mean, my family growing up didn't have much money. I don't know that I say I'm rich or anything, but I'm doing okay. So, but would I say I've like clawed myself out of poverty? No, not really. I was lower middle class. Now I'm like maybe middle class. Um, but if I had to pick something, it's been the last few years of, this is probably just me having multiple midlife crises on a regular basis. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that. I don't know that I call it crises. I feel like, midlife crisis in the 60s, what you see on TV, it's like, I don't know if that was real, but nobody would talk about it. So they just basically break down and run out on the, you know, 45-year-old man would break down, not talk, went out on his wife with a Ferrari and start a new life. It seems to be what midlife crises were, but really beating around the bush here. It's imposter syndrome. It's imposter syndrome because I got the promotion at work to be the district manager, and I've never really had like super formal training on my job, and it's something for work especially I've had to learn on the job, make things up as I go, and when I started going to like CinemaCon or trade conferences and meeting with people, and there's all these people that manage these big cinema chains treating you as almost as equals. I mean, with any business, you get looked down on. Oh, how many theaters do you guys have? Three? Oh, it's like, well, we have 1,100. Like, but no, it's just the imposter syndrome, and it hits when all of a sudden people are looking for you for answers and what to do, and all of a sudden, yeah, you have the experience, but it doesn't feel like you're any different. Still feel like I'm a teenager in a lot of ways. Probably act like one sometimes,
Well, and
but
I also imagine with, leading up to this interview here, there was probably a good amount of imposter syndrome that was coming up just as you're reading over the questions and coming up to this time. It's like, man, why would Marcus want to interview someone like me? It's like you're
I
talking
mean,
with you're talking with someone else who struggles with imposter syndrome too.
it's one of those things. Talking to my therapist, I think a lot of people do. It's just one of those things that it hits at one point or another in your life, and you just have to kind of learn to live with it
hmm
and
And
remind yourself that everybody else probably feels the same way at some point.
yeah. And so speaking of that, what are some things that you've done to help you overcome this struggle with imposter syndrome?
Distraction. Anyone in therapy watch anyone that's got any background in therapy watching this is probably dying a little inside. My the ways I'm best at dealing with anything that makes me uncomfortable is distraction. Maybe not anything that makes me uncomfortable, but I just try to shut that thought out of my head. To
Mhm.
me, imposter syndrome is an intrusive thought, so it's just like I, or compensate for it. Well, if I'm, if I've made it, then surely I should make a 3,000 page spreadsheet, um, analyzing all of these things. I don't know. It's I try not to think about it. Um, I don't know. I think the goal would be to get to the point where it's like, oh well, maybe I have made it or am worthy of this recognition. But I there's another thing that I have trouble overcoming is low self-esteem. I just I'm big on self-deprecation and sometimes in joking ways, sometimes just literally don't feel like I've earned things. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
hard.
that's very relatable.
I'll give one more example. I know I'm talking way too much, but when I um, rewired the electrical outlet or redid the electrical outlet, when I redid the exhaust fan in our house, I know enough about electricity to understand the basics. I know what code, I know, the most important codes and to do how to do things safely, not electrocute yourself, but I'm not an expert. But am I comfortable switching out an outlet? Oh yeah. Am I comfortable doing ex installing an exhaust fan? Yes. But I kid you not, when John was here helping, it's like I want you to stand here and hold this fire extinguisher just in case before I turn it on. Um, and I want you to yell if anything happens when I flip the breaker. And then for like a week, I'm just like constantly looking at it, feeling around. Is it warm? The outlet? Is something wrong? Do I smell any smoke? It's like I know what I'm doing, but there's just something about it where I just don't feel. And I was telling John, maybe I should be an electrician. We were talking about this driving home the other day. I don't know why it came up, but it's like I'd probably be knocking on people's door like 3 months later after I did the job and be like, "You mind if I just check, make sure everything's right?" I'm sure that would be you then build your confidence if you had an electrician knocking on your door that wired your house 3 months later. Is everything okay? Any problems? Anyway, that's kind of the way I am. I guess for me, imposter syndrome is I just never trust myself fully.
Yeah. And coming from someone else who struggles with imposter syndrome, and I have shared so many times about myself and my journey of trying to publish a book, and I'm like, I've said on several podcasts now, it's like I'm sure you guys are tired of me using this as an example, but it is such a huge thing for us to wrestle with when we don't have that self-confidence, when we don't believe in ourselves. And like for myself personally, trying to overcome that has been, I would say, the biggest challenge in my life because it is one of those things I have been so, I've just grown up with it for so long that a lot of times I just don't even know what's happening. I'm not aware of those messages. And that's kind of been the big task for me is trying to recognize when am I going back down into these paths of just not even self-deprecation, but just tearing myself down over my failings.
Yeah. There's it's like I know that I should have confidence in myself, and it's like it's easy to say that, but it's just in the moment, it's not easy.
Mhm. Absolutely. Next question is, who is someone who has helped you get where you are today?
I thought about this one for a while, and there's some obvious and not so obvious answers, but there's something that I've thought about before, and it always comes back in my life. I was a weird, shy, nerdy, little awkward middle schooler, and I try not to think about times before then, but I was this fat, this chunky little kid wearing these big, thick rimmed 90s glasses like all the kids are wearing now because they think they're cool. Um, and then I basically had a pocket protector and walked around talking about how I love playing SimCity or whatever. Sounds like a fun kid, right? Ate my plate of nachos every day after school. Yeah, I was anyway, very introverted. Um, there was in eighth grade, um, when we were signing up for our high school classes, I remember a guidance counselor who told me that I should do ROTC and um, that it would be good for me. And JROTC, if you don't know, it's the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps in high school. We had the Navy in Apache Junction where I went to school. And oh shoot, and everyone's gonna be able to guess my credit card login or whatever. So I said what city I grew up in. They won't. Um, they it's loosely affiliated with the military. I mean, the military puts out a little bit of funding, but really it's mostly a school thing. It's not that affiliated with the military, and it's most of the stuff they teach about is, at least for the Navy version, was naval history and leadership. And the leadership was a big thing. And being in that, probably being in marching band, although marching band, I think if I was just a marching band, I still would have just been a big, giant, weird, awkward nerd. But the ROTC class, taking leadership classes, made me get out of my comfort zone. And um, I don't want to say be more outgoing because I'm really not the most outgoing person, but I don't know in the same way that I would have branched out and been able to be more social and make friends, um, if it wasn't for that course and doing that for so long. And um, it taught me a lot of good life skills about leadership and things. And I didn't ultimately go in the Navy. I could have. They wanted I got a letter from John McCain saying, congratulations, because he was the senator for where I lived in Arizona, saying congratulations on your abilities. And I got nominated. He said, if you want, you get the nomination to the Naval Academy. I could have gone to the Naval Academy, but being a little queer kid in 2005, that was not really. Everybody's like, oh, it's fine. The senior chief was like, oh, it's fine if you're gay. You just don't tell them. Don't ask, don't tell. It'll be fine. He's like, everyone's gay in the Navy. They just don't talk about it.
I've never heard
But
that before.
that's the way they all were. Yeah, everybody and it was funny. We had a Marine Corps, a couple different teachers, but we had the senior chief um, the last couple of years I was there, and then a Marine Corps major. And by the way, he thought it was great that I brought a guy to military ball. This big guy, he was a sergeant major. This guy in the Marine Corps, or no, yeah, ma just a major, not a sergeant major. But yeah, actually, I think sergeant major is below major, but that's I don't know. We were Navy, Department of the Navy is Marine Corps was the time at least. I think they're still together, but I'm embarrassing myself. But yeah, getting off topic. Point is, if you want to hear me talk more about this sometime, I can tell you. But the leadership was big, and it really helped me in management in the early years at the theater, because the approaches I took and the way I separated my uh, personal and professional lives helped me in my work in the theater. And um, I guess it brought me down to earth more. I don't know, but it made me feel like more of a normal person. And if it weren't for that guidance counselor, Chad Nelson is the guy's name. Uh, yeah, probably would have been different. I
Yeah,
probably would
and
have.
I can honestly say that I'm grateful to Chad Nelson because if he didn't offer that kind of guidance, I don't know if you and I ever would have met.
I the couple of friends that I still talk to in high school. One of them, Jared, I knew in middle school, so maybe. But the other ones I all met through our ROTC or marching band. But it's funny, actually, there were like four of us that were in both. But if you ever want to know what my high school looked like, it was basically marching. That's all I did. In high school was marching. March for 4 hours with a saxophone, then go march for another four with a rifle, fake rifle.
Yeah.
But no, it was just like it seems like a pivotal point, and who knows,
Mhm.
maybe it would have happened on its own. But yeah. Anyway,
It's one of those interesting things where, you know, we look at where we are today and it's like, well, we made all these different decisions kind of down the line that brought us to where we are today. And it, to me, it tends to necessitate this curiosity of, well, what would have life been like had this person not given me those words of encouragement, had I not decided to go down this route? And, you know, as much as I can ponder and think on all of that, I am where I am today, and I have individuals in my life like you, like John and Libby, and I personally cannot imagine anything different that I would want to have.
well, I appreciate it. We're happy to have you in our life too, Marcus.
So I'm just, regardless of what brought you here, the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, I'm glad that it brought us to meeting in the fellowship of the dice, and our friendship has just grown from there.
Mhm.
So my next
It's
question
been
for
fun.
you, it has been fun. It has been a lot of fun. So my next question is, what is something that you enjoy doing that you just come to life doing?
I've been thinking about this one, and this was like the second one that was hard for me. It shouldn't be. I have so
It
many
shouldn't
weird
it
little.
here's the thing, it shouldn't be, but I I'm gonna check here. Did have I already released this podcast or is it one that's coming up? No, it's one that's going to be coming out. Actually,
No spoilers.
it's going to be the one coming out just before this one releases, where I talk about guilty pleasures and how for a lot of people things that they find pleasurable they tend to feel guilty about doing. So it can be really hard for people to admit what are some things that they enjoy because we have this notion in life, oh, it's a guilty pleasure because we shouldn't be doing, there's other things that we could be doing instead of playing games or woodworking, or, we could be devoting this time to like some kind of job or career or project. And it's like, fuck that, man. No, we can have
I
pleasure just for the
watch,
sake of having pleasure.
I recreationally watch air crash investigation videos. That that's true, although that is not what makes me come to life, but it is a guilty pleasure.
So, what are
So
some
what
of the
it
things
is,
that, yeah, what are some of the things that just make you come to life?
I don't know. It's hard. I like lots of little things. If I think I like baking. I think baking really is something I enjoy. Although the thing about baking and cooking, but probably more baking, but the thing about baking is this is a lot of on and off. You have to work real hard for 20 minutes to mix everything together, then you put it in the oven and you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, watching videos. Um, I I'm like scanning my room for my office for things. I enjoy making things up. Like D&D's been fun because I it makes me want to get into improv, although I've never tried it. But um, I feel like I'm good at kind of sometimes being funny on the fly or doing silly things. One of these days, maybe in one of our sessions, I'll play or one of our campaigns, I'll play a serious character, but we'll see. I guess you could say right now who I'm playing is serious, but
Yeah, Walavar is a pretty serious character, and yet sometimes you just come up with this quip that's just so out of the blue, it just catches us off guard, and it's so funny.
it's so hard for me to play 10 Candles with John because I can't be a serious person for long periods of time. It's just not my thing. If you guys don't know, 10 Candles is a game about the end of the world where all your characters are slowly falling victim to impending doom, maybe. I don't know if that's a brief summary, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a game where you expect your character not to make it in the end, and that's you go in with that expectation.
the first time I played it, I kept cracking jokes and oops. Anyway, I uh I just like lots of little things, but I have trouble focusing, zeroing in on single things. It's like when I was younger, I enjoyed building model kits. Now it's just kind of like, why? What's the purpose? I guess for fun.
Mhm.
Um, creative things, but I also am not. I like. I used to put hundreds of hours into like SimCity and or City Skylines types of games. I don't as much anymore because even though I got a degree in urban planning, it's just, eh, what what what's the purpose of this? To pass time, I guess. But the woodworking I've been enjoying, but I don't know that I come to life doing it. I enjoy it, but I don't know. I think I consider it an obsessive personality where I get really into things for a while, maybe come to life about it for a while, and then kind of cool off after a while. So, yeah.
And there's honestly nothing wrong with that. I mean, if I use myself as an example here, this is something that Libby will oftentimes make fun of me for because I do enjoy playing video games. For those of you watching the video version of this, it's abundantly clear if you look behind me that, video games are a big thing that I enjoy doing and I talk about them. And I will select several games that I will play in tandem at the same time until one of them absolutely grips me. And then that's the only one that I will focus on to the detriment of everything else, to the point where it's like, oh, yeah, I was really enjoying this game over here, but I haven't played it for several months and I forgot going on. I guess I just need to start over from the beginning. But I do that same thing.
I recognize some of the artwork on your wall from RadCon.
Yes, yes, from RadCon last year.
Just clicked.
Yeah. As soon as I got those, I've had them back here ever since, and I love seeing them.
Yeah, I haven't played Satisfactory in like 4 months, but I have. I don't know that I came to life playing it, but it's just that's an example. 1456.5.
Wow, I got some
Oof.
catching up to do. I'm only at 337. I will say that the times when we were playing Satisfactory together, I would definitely say that was something where you did come to life while playing. It was something that you got excited doing. And just the number of times you and I will get together for coffee and the conversation will inevitably go to Satisfactory. And we will just talk about what we're building and the struggles that we're coming through, how far we're making it, and I would definitely say it's even if it's one of those things where it's like it's seasonal, you go through a season where that's the focus. Yeah, I would say it's a passion of yours.
You hear that coffee stain? Send us royalties.
Free marketing.
Uh, No, I mean when 1.0 came out, you and I were like talking about I think we literally got to the point where we were sitting drinking coffee talking about like how many hundreds per minute screws or whatever we're producing.
Yeah. And I'm still working on my first rail line. I'm still working on that.
It's it's easy for me to get obsessed with things or get into things, I think. Although I don't
Yeah.
know that I ever go as far as some people. I don't know what
And
I mean by that. I know some of our friends in our group are way more into D&D than I am. And for me, I was like, I've been enjoying what we've been doing, but I'm just not the type of person to go out and buy 10 cents a dice or not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me it's more of a casual thing. I still haven't painted my dice box, so I've
oh,
had it for
your
3 months.
mimic, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
6 months. Oh, September was 6 months ago.
Time flies by, doesn't it?
What? How? How's it been almost 6 months, 6 months and 2 weeks since we went? Or no, I think it was at the beginning of September. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everyone has the things that they enjoy, and yeah, not everyone's going to be a guy. I was going to say a Geistgoblin because my brain and my tongue are not communicating, but not everyone's going to become a dice goblin or, let's face it, we have that one friend in our fellowship group, and if you're listening, you know who we're talking about here, who is taking it beyond the dice goblin to the dice dragon, because like every single time he goes to one of the shops that sells dice, he gets a new set, and I love it, that just that passion and that drive, but at the same time, you know, everyone's going to enjoy something like D&D to the extent that they want to. And if it's more casual for you, great. No shame about
Hmm.
that. We still have fun whenever we get together. And I
I think I'm that way with a lot of hobbies. It's just grabbing ones, getting into them a bit, but then kind of being flighty. Anyway,
it
going for
happens.
longest interview here.
So my next question is, what is a hero to you? Like what does a hero look like?
That's hard. And that was one of the other ones. I know I said there were two, but really all the questions I was kind of fuzzy on. But it's hard because I feel these days like we're living in a world where there really aren't any heroes. I don't know if that's true, but I feel like I'm just reading. I'm about to read the Merriam-Webster definition here, but a hero is a person who is aspirational. It's I think it's somebody who there's lots of different contexts for heroism. It's not a one size fits all thing, you know. Superman might be a hero, but there's other ways that you could be a hero in many ways. But somebody who sets an example, tries to aspire to be better. I think to me, a hero is somebody who's always questioning um, themselves, trying to see how they can be a better person, how they can do more to help in the world. I have been, when I donate blood, I started donating blood when the gay blood ban got lifted it's been about a year and a half now. Um, and you know, they call you a hero when you donate there, but I don't feel like one. And John's been like, but you're doing a good thing. And it's like, so I sit there and they stick a needle in me for 15 minutes or 10 minutes and I'm done. It's like, that's not being a hero. But to me, it's important to try and do little things where you can. So I think that's how you be a hero is just doing little things and trying to learn from your past mistakes and be a better person. That I think is what a hero would be. So
Yeah. Man, I there wasn't anything there that you said that I would want to push back on. I like how what you had just described is how there are many times that we ourselves will look at what we are doing as really not that big of a deal and it's not something that's that heroic. And yet from the perspective of someone else, and maybe that's even like our imposter syndrome coming in where it's like, oh well, yeah, that wasn't really that big of a deal or anything like that. But if you think about it, for the example that you gave about donating blood, for you it's like, yeah, I took time out of my day and I had a needle stuck in me for 10 minutes and ooh, I gotta have, juice and a cookie, afterward. Or that was a big deal when I gave blood back in high school. And it's like, well, it's not really that big of a deal. But to the person who receives that when they're in potentially a life or death situation, that is a big heroic step. And that means the world to them.
I feel bad for bringing it up because I feel like I'm not trying to put myself up on a pedestal or anything. But you should donate blood though if you are listening.
Well,
Sorry,
it
Marcus. No
it, it
pressure.
reminds it reminds me that, I had a bad experience with giving blood to where I because I would give as regularly as I could, and then I ended up
I,
going
I
in one
did
time. I ended up going in
same.
one time, and then they could not find any of my blood vessels, and I was there for about 10, 15 minutes, and they stuck me in like, seven different places, and they could not find one to work, and that kind
Um,
of put me off it. But I'm starting to remember it's like, that is kind of an important thing for me to get back into, especially since I'm
well,
better about hydrating these days.
it was a confluence of things, but I mean at the time, uh, I was 18, 19, and starting to become sorry, it's an adult podcast, I guess. We'll say active um, as a lover. I made that sound way worse than if I just said sexually active, but I didn't want to lie about it either,
hmm
because to me it's you might be doing a good thing, but it's just frustrating every time to have to be like, no. Yeah, that seems I don't like lying about things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's we I'm rambling, Marcus, but I guess I'm really frustrated with the regression we're having culturally the last year or so because I know I have some friends that are in their 30s and have kids, and they're not indoctrinating their children. There's this whole thing over manliness, and it it's it was so nice seeing people that are like, questioning societal norms and, teaching their kids how to be good people. And, they're like, oh, well, we made mistakes in the past and we try to build from them. And, you don't have to play sports and be manly to be a good dad or a good human and whatnot. And then, of course, society now is like, no, that's gay. That's bad if you're not doing that. And my point
Yeah.
is that people pushing back against the idea of learning from past mistakes. It's very frustrating that's what's happening right now
Mhm.
in the world.
Yeah, it really
Because we were
is.
making progress,
And
in my opinion.
I would even dare say we were making some good progress. And now it seems like there's so many people in power that are wanting to just take all of that progress away, and it's just frustrating.
But that's another way people can be heroes. Heroes to me, at least, when I see people
Yeah.
raising their kids the right way, I guess.
Yeah. And if you're someone like you or someone like me, Libby and I, we don't have kids of our own, but we still try and have as positive of an influence as we can on the the coming generation as we can. Yeah, I don't have kids of my own, but I'm gonna be the best damn uncle that I can be.
Mhm. For sure. Goal. And it's kids aren't dumb. You don't have to dumb everything down for them or withhold history. You can make things teaching lessons, or just tell them people it's just the way it is. It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about guilt.
Guilt and shame,
Anyway,
they
I'm
don't
sorry. I'm
work.
getting off topic.
Well, the final question that I have, Dan, is who is an influential hero in your life, whether that be someone fictional or real?
I don't have a good answer on this one. We'll talk about it. Have you seen Battlestar Galactica?
I have seen some of Battlestar
So
Galactica.
I think a person I aspire to be like is Colonel Adama in Battlestar Galactica, the captain. He's a pretty cool guy. Good leader, He is serious but respectful. Um, Treats people with dignity, makes good decisions. So that's my fictional character. In real life, I don't know. Have you ever read about Teddy Roosevelt?
I am familiar with Teddy Roosevelt. I can't say that I've read anything about him outside of what was in my history textbooks when I was in
Well,
school.
I'm somewhat kidding. I know he's an aspirational figure too in a lot of ways because he's proof that you can stand up for what you think's right and um, be successful. I mean, he's a person that yes had some shady views on genetics, eugenics. It was the popular movement at the time. There's going to be a lot of things that we believe now in 100 years that are going to look bad. But no, I mean he went after big monopolies and corporations and broke them up. He created the National Park Service, or well, kind of established a bunch of national parks. He's big on conservation. He um, basically the things he did in his career in politics like go in every direction politically, and it's funny. It's interesting because nowadays, you can't, you will never have anyone like that anymore, but that's what he believed and he stood up for it. Interesting here, character in history, but I don't know why I brought that up. It just popped in my head, but
But you said something there at the end that to me sounds very heroic is believing in something so strongly that you will just stand up for it,
Mhm.
even if it's something that's unpopular. Now, we can also take a look at what's going on now in the political arena and say that there are a lot of people who are doing that, which then I would refer you to the podcast episode Protagonist versus Antagonist and the differences between those. Because, when we're talking about antagonists, they're heroes in their own stories. But what they're standing up for is counter to what the protagonist is standing up for. But I like having these conversations because I need to be reminded daily, weekly, as often as possible, the value and importance of me being the hero in my own story.
Mhm. Oh, and if you don't mind me, I'm not trying to interrupt. I also family members, my grandparents are interesting. I I wish I knew more about my grandparents on my dad's side. I don't. I mean, I knew my grandmother, but it was more distant, and she didn't. I'm saying way too much, probably. I don't think anyone's going to hear this. They'll be offended, but she never really got along with my mom, so there we were more distant. Um, but my grandfather on my dad's side, he died at 36, but he designed cars for Plymouth, I believe. Uh, he was one of the people that crafted in clay. He'd draw them out and then craft in clay the car models for upcoming years. Uh, Probably would have been a fascinating person to know, but he died more than 20 years before I was even born. Um, and on my mom's side, my grandpa did all kinds of crazy things. I tried to make it a mission to learn more, but in a lot of ways, I think of everyone in my family, more similar to him than even my parents. That I like lots of weird, random things. But he, uh, he was in the Navy for just a little bit during the Korean War, or right after, I think, or right before. Timing's a little iffy on that. I'd have to double check, but um, he worked as a electrician afterwards on a Navy base for like 30 years. And he helped run power lines out in El Centro, California, the middle of the Imperial Valley in these sand dunes where it's 120 degrees. He was up on power pole, putting up power lines in the
Wow.
1950s.
That sounds like a
And his
miserable job.
his parents were immigrants from England and like they came over after the First World War and they got this little tiny shack in the middle of the barren desert with no power, running water, and that's where he grew up. And I regret not asking more when he was alive. He passed away about 2 years ago, and I tried to ask him more about his history as I got older, but there's just not time. But talk about people I would like to aspire to be more like, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like my life's easy. Am I wasting it? Those questions. Does that make me not an anti-hero? I don't know.
That sounds like the imposter syndrome coming out again. Coming from someone who wrestles with those same questions.
Is this an interview or am I kind of coercing free therapy out of you, Marcus?
It's one of those things
No.
where, it's hard for me not to put on my coaching hat and just kind of ask questions and ponder. So, it's both, we'll say. It's both.
To anyone listening to this that still has grandparents alive, you should talk to your grandparents
I
because
I agree 100% with that.
and I've I mean, even my parents are in their mid 60s now, and I'm like, I should be asking them more about their childhood and writing down stories because time's limited. We need to share these things.
Yeah. And especially considering, one of those potentially formative individuals in your life pass away before you were even born. We never know. We never know how much time we're going to have with these people, which is why I have tried to be more intentional about spending time with friends and family that I really do want to spend time with. I mean, it's going back to our conversation about Satisfactory. When we were playing that together, the four of us, Dan and his fiance John, and then myself and my partner Libby, Dan was working in this factory and he put this random sign just kind of tucked away in a corner somewhere. And I just happened to go over and it's like, oh, I want to take a look at the factory that Dan had made. And I go in there and I find this sign and it says Dan owes a coffee to whoever reads this sign. And I'm just like, Dan? Yeah? I found this sign here that says you owe coffee to whoever finds it. And he's like, well, I guess I owe you a coffee then. And that has turned into us getting together every single month to have coffee, to sit down and talk and connect. And it's just been wonderful because again, Dan, you're one of those people that I do want to spend time with. You're one of those people that I want to get to know more, to learn more about you. And I have found like you and John both have had just incredibly positive influences in my life. And so I want to continue to foster that. So yeah, it's
Me too. And
your friendship is one of those that I try and be very intentional about getting to spend time with you. So it can just continue
oh,
to grow.
I do have COS, chronic overshare syndrome. So
COS,
no,
that's a new one. I believe I had a friend at my previous church who described one of the symptoms of that called diarrhea of the mouth. That's how he described it was as soon as he started talking, it's just like bleh, he couldn't stop himself and he would just overshare.
yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Now, I know I've said I will be honest, I'm not going to lie about it. I have not listened to your podcast yet. I really want to. I have it open in tabs on my computer and in my on my phone, but I I don't know what it is. I want to give it undivided attention, but for me, when I'm listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos in the background, etc., I'm not giving it undivided attention. I feel like that's not fair. But have you answered these questions?
I I would say that I have answered these questions sporadically throughout oh gosh, what the almost 90 episodes at this
Yeah,
point. Oh my goodness.
that's fair.
Yeah, almost 90 episodes and I I would be interested in actually like sitting down and coming up with answers to these questions myself because I have four episodes where I'm just talking about my story. So going into
Hmm.
snapshots, much more than snapshots of aspects of my life and things I'm constantly talking about things that I'm overcoming and things I enjoy doing. And I have these hero study episodes where I'm talking about fictional and non-fictional people that I find heroic qualities with. So, yeah, I could say if you were to take the entire catalog of almost 90 episodes and put them together, yes, I've answered these questions. Have I sat down and answered them all like you're doing right now? No, I haven't.
You should do one where you interview yourself.
You know what?
No, I'm kidding.
I might have Libby come on one time and interview me this way. just to force me to sit down and actually do it.
Well, two things, and I'll be brief. I could just, of course, set a goal and say, before I turn 40, I need to catch up on your podcast. But I have the luxury of just asking you if I have questions or want to talk about these things at coffee or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, well, if you'll allow it, I would like to ask, in your life, fictional or non-fictional, who's an influential hero? If you're okay
Oh
entertaining that.
man, that
Or
is
just one or top five.
oh man, yeah, top five. I think that would be what I would have to go with because there's so many. One of the ones that I've done recently is Kenshin Himura from the Rurouni Kenshin manga and anime. He's in fact on like Discord and in some of these other places, I have a picture of him as my profile picture. I love him so much. I don't
Okay.
know if you can see, but I've got a shelf over here that has a figure of him that I got, but I don't know if
Okay.
I don't
It's
know if
just out
it's
of
actually
frame.
showing
That's
up.
okay.
Yeah. So there's him. I have always been a big fan of Qui-Gon Jinn from the Star Wars, the prequels.
Hmm.
Um, and Cecil Harvey from Final Fantasy IV. He's probably been one of the most influential in my life because he was a character that really showed the dynamic of someone who has like a dark history and is able to overcome that and become something better.
Hmm.
I've always loved that. Now I got to look around my office here for some examples because I've got like Luigi all over the place. This is one of my favorite characters
From
as
Mario
well.
Brothers,
Yeah, Luigi
to
from Mario
clarify.
Brothers.
To
Yes.
clarify, yes.
Um, and for a selfish example, I would say, my partner Libby is one of those who I've been able to experience in her journey a lot with the almost 16 years that we've been together. And being able to see her work through and overcome and just grow stronger is incredible. And I would
I feel like
say
I should have mentioned John.
and I would probably say the last example of a hero, I really wanted to interview this person, but when I reached out to him, he said that he would love to, but he'd just gotten rid of all of his podcasting equipment, is my
Uh-huh.
friend Mike McCarg. In my journey with faith deconstruction and everything, he was a very influential person who shared his stories and experiences of being a devout Christian to being an atheist to being a Christian mystic and kind of what that has looked like, even with him becoming or like finding out as an adult that he it has the or he's on the autism spectrum as well. But I would say that those would be five examples of heroes, fictional and non-fictional, in my life.
I'm impressed that you got full five there. You counted it out. But no, those are good. I didn't think of anime, and I feel bad for not mentioning John because John's a hero too to me because he tries so hard and I don't he can't say no to things and he does so much for so many people and
Yeah,
he's never going to get credit for it because he's a teacher and teachers don't get credit in our society for things usually.
unfortunately, yeah, unfortunately that's true. But no, John's gonna be interviewed in the future. So, and Dan, I can't thank you enough for taking time out on this Sunday with daylight savings beginning, and we had an incredible D&D session last night, and we all got home too late. Everything. I just want to say thank you so much for your time, for just sharing with the listeners about your own experiences and everything. This has been a great time.
Thanks for the flexibility.
We made it work, and I'm glad that when I asked if you were willing to do this, you said yes.
Yeah.
So
Well, thanks for having me, and hopefully you cut those parts out where created sound bites
don't worry, I will remove those. Uh,
or bleep them.
yeah.
Wow, he's really got a foul mouth. I wonder what he was saying. Bleep, 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 bleep.
Yeah. But is there anything else you want to share, like, social media or anything if people want to connect with you or
Well, I used to stream a long time ago, but it's been 3.5 or about 4 years now since I streamed on Twitch. I don't do that much on social media these days, at least of sharing my own opinion. Except in
yeah.
the Tri-Cities Reddit, I have a lot to say in there.
I have I did not realize the Tri-Cities had its own subreddit.
Tri-Cities WA, WA. I don't know. Everybody's gonna go look now. It's
Well,
okay. I have
when
opinions. They're right.
so since I do have you on here, and this is something that has come up so many times for me recently, I do just want to share for me the funniest story that still gets me to laugh when you and I were playing Stardew Valley with John and Libby. And we just had this really funny thing going on where people would come in late and it's like you try and get to bed before 2 a.m. or else your character would pass out. And
Can I add one caveat or one thing to that?
yeah, what's that?
Marcus was the host of the game, so I just want to be clear.
Yes.
His house was the first one you hit.
Yes, I was the one hosting the game, so my house was in like as soon as you entered the farm, really from two out of the three locations, my house was pretty convenient to get to. But there were so many times when Libby, John, or Dan would be like, "Oh shoot, I've got to get back home," and it was quicker just to come into my house, and so we would joke around about having, all the sleepovers at Farmer Marcus's house. But there was this one time, oh my Lord, this just I still laugh thinking about this, where we were all waiting for Dan to get his character to come to bed so we could end that night and start the next day. And all of a
I
sudden,
always waited until the last minute.
and you know
Always.
what? I'm playing Fields of Mystery these days, and I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm waiting until the last minute. I still have energy. I can do this.
Yeah.
And so Dan was doing his usual thing, waiting until the last minute, and then he's like, oh no, I gotta get back." And we're all just kind of waiting. And Dan's like, "Marcus, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to come to sleep in your bed again." And it's like, whatever. It's happened so many times. And then I hear Dan, "Oh no, Marcus, I don't think I'm gonna make it." And I see his character enter my house, start running across the screen or running across the room, and he passes out like right at the foot of my bed. And just having Dad go, "Oh no, Marcus, I don't think I'm gonna make it," and then you see his character just kind of go and fall to the ground.
It's funny that
It still makes me laugh thinking about that.
the first time I ever did it, it was on purpose. It was I knew I wouldn't make it, so I went in and just crawled into your bed. I don't even think you noticed it first.
I don't even know if I did, but then
Till the next
everyone
morning.
started doing it.
Yeah, everyone, it just became a meme, and I was like, "Oh, come on, guys!" I'd go sleep in my normal bed, but yeah,
Yeah.
at first it was
But yeah, that's right.
that was funny.
I don't think I noticed it, and all of a sudden the next morning I wake up, I'm like, "Dan, what are you doing in here?"
I distinctly remember a few times where all four of us were piled together.
Yeah, in a single bed. Oh, the
Like,
memories.
what
I
about
love
our what
it.
about our in-game spouses?
Yeah, what about our
They're okay
in-game
with it.
spouses? Oh, that was so fun. Yeah, so if you're interested in like seeing what Dan's up to, he does post sometimes under his handle of Propaganda. Otherwise, you can continue to hear stories of the shenanigans and stuff that we get into here because I do use examples of you and everyone else in the fellowship because there's so many examples that come up of how we are supporting each other and taking these steps to become the heroes in our stories that it's an abundant garden for me to pull from.
You should interview our characters next, and we'll all dress up as our characters. I'm kidding.
All right. Well, one more time, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate you giving me this time and allowing me to offer this space. And we will see who's going to be interviewed or researched for the next hero study. And until next time, live strong for today.
Thank you, Marcus. Bye bye.